I grew up in a house where whispers weren't just polite. They were survival. That might sound strange, but in my family, the rule was carved deeper than the Bible on the nightstand or the prayers at Sunday dinner. From the moment I could talk, my mother pressed a finger to her lips and said, "Soft, baby." Always soft. We whispered at the table. We whispered in the halls. We whispered even when we were angry. And let me tell you, try arguing with your sister when you're both hissing through your teeth like snakes. It turns every fight into something surreal, like you're pretending at being human. As a kid, I thought it was just one of those bizarre family quirks. Every family has one, right? Maybe your mom makes you wear socks at all times. Maybe your dad insists on parking the car facing east. Ours was, never raise your voice inside the house. But there were cracks in that normalcy, little things that made the rule feel heavier than just a quirk. Like how mom always set one extra plate at dinner, or how our family tree on the wall had a blank line marked "third child," or how, at night, I'd sometimes hear scratching beneath the floorboards, like fingernails dragging along wood. I didn't think too much of it when I was small. You don't question rituals when you grow up surrounded by them. You just adapt. But then I turned 12. That was the summer everything changed. It was July, sticky and hot, the kind of southern heat where the air feels like wet wool draped over your skin. My sister Caroline and I were home alone, sprawled out on the carpet pretending to do puzzles while really trying to steal turns on the Nintendo when mom wasn't watching. The air conditioner rattled uselessly in the window. Sweat glued my shirt to my back. I remember thinking, if I hear one more cicada, I'm going to lose it. And then Caroline screamed. Not a little squeak, not a playful boo, a full lungs-out shriek that bounced off the walls. And in that split second, I learned exactly why we were never supposed to raise our voices. The floor shuddered beneath us. A sound answered her scream. The shriek of splintering wood, as if something below had been waiting hungry for that signal. The boards bulged upward. Scratching erupted, frantic and desperate, like 100 fingernails raking their way up. I froze. Caroline scrambled backward, hands clutching her mouth, eyes wide with horror. Then the floor split. What crawled out? I still see it every night when I close my eyes. It came on its elbows and knees, like a baby too big for its own bones. Its skin was swollen and stretched tight, mottled red as if it had been boiled. Its head lolled unnaturally, connected to its torso by a strip of rotting flesh that looped around its throat like a noose before disappearing into its grotesquely distended belly. And its face, God. Its face. It was Caroline's face. Or at least, the beginnings of it. The thing was building her, piece by piece, as if her scream had given it permission. Her teeth, perfect little braces glinting, were embedded in its gums. Her hair, blonde and tangled, sprouted patchy from its skull. One of her eyes, still bright and blue, blinked wetly from a socket that wasn't finished growing. It looked at me with her eye, and it smiled with her teeth. I wanted to scream too. My lungs were locked, chest burning, but some instinct, some deep animal terror, kept me silent. The creature dragged itself forward, a wet slap of knees and palms, its tether of flesh tightening as it pulled free of the floor. Caroline scrambled to her feet, but she wasn't fast enough. The thing lunged, and then she was gone. No blood, no fight, just silence, as though the house swallowed her whole. The boards sealed shut behind it, smooth and perfect, as if nothing had ever broken through. When Mom got home, I tried to tell her. I whispered it, of course, but she already knew. Her eyes were red, not from crying, but from years of expecting this moment. She touched my shoulder gently and said, "The rule is the only thing that keeps it at bay. Caroline broke it. Now it has her." I begged to call the police, to shout for help, to run outside and tell the neighbors. She pressed her hand over my mouth. "Do you want it to hear you too?" And that was it. My sister was erased from our family tree. Her plate at dinner was set one last time. Then even that was gone. Life moved on. Whispering. Always whispering. I tried to live normal after that. High school. First job. College out of state. I thought distance might mean safety, like the rule only mattered inside that cursed house. But silence follows you in ways you can't imagine. Even in dorm rooms, I found myself whispering to roommates. At parties, I laughed too quietly. And sometimes, when someone shouted too loud nearby, I swore I felt the floor beneath my feet shift as if it remembered me. I never married, never had children. I couldn't imagine bringing a baby into a world where a single cry could summon that. I tell myself that choice is power, that I've broken the cycle. But last week, something happened that shattered that fragile comfort. I was in my apartment, third floor, concrete foundation, no creaky wood floors to blame. I'd just settled into bed when I heard it. A scratch, slow, patient, from beneath the floor. I froze, heart hammering. No, impossible. There was no crawl space, no basement, just solid concrete under me. The scratching came again. Closer this time, followed by the faint creak of wood, even though there was no wood. And then, a voice. Small, fragile. Brother? I never had children, but maybe I never needed to. Maybe, somewhere beneath me, Caroline is still waiting. Not the sister I lost, but the thing that wears her face. And maybe it doesn't need screams anymore. Maybe, after all these years, it's learned to whisper back. I wasn't looking for trouble. I was looking for money. The job listing popped up on a site I usually use to find handyman work and odd gigs around town. The headline was simple. Museum attendant needed. Night shift. $100. HR. Easy work. Discretion required. That last part, discretion required, should have set off alarms. But I was broke, drowning in divorce bills, and one late rent check away from sleeping in my car. $100 an hour sounded like a miracle. So, I didn't hesitate. I clicked apply. The address wasn't to a museum. Not the kind you'd expect anyway. It was an old warehouse at the edge of town. The kind you pass on the highway without ever noticing. No sign, no parking lot. Just corrugated steel walls, rusting at the seams. The man who met me outside wasn't much for conversation. Gray suit, cheap tie, clipboard in hand. He barely looked at me as he rattled off instructions. You don't touch the exhibits. You don't move from your station. Keep your phone off. Log every sound you hear. And if you see anyone, you call me immediately. I nodded, trying to look professional. And the exhibits are? That was when he finally looked me in the eye. His pupils seemed too dark, too large, like bottomless wells. You'll know them when you see them. Inside, the warehouse was cavernous. Empty except for 3 exhibits arranged in a triangle under weak spotlights. No walls, no glass cases. Just there. The first was a heavy oak table, its surface gouged and chewed as if something with jagged teeth had gnawed straight through the wood. A brass plaque at its base read, "The Hunger." The second was a pair of shoes. Scuffed leather, soles worn paper thin, laces torn. At first glance, they were just old shoes. But the longer I stared, the more I realized they weren't just worn down. They were eroded, as if the shoes had walked themselves to death. Their plaque read, "The shoes that walked home." And then there was the pedestal. It stood taller than me, a marble plinth, gleaming white under its spotlight. But the surface where an artifact should have been displayed was empty. The brass plaque at its base was the simplest of all. The painter. Do not look when occupied. My first instinct was to laugh. Empty pedestal? What kind of museum exhibit was that? But then I noticed something. a faint mark, almost like smudges of paint trailing down the side, and the hair on the back of my neck prickled. The man in the suit handed me a logbook and a chair. He repeated the rules in clipped tones. Don't move. Don't touch. Don't look when occupied. Before I could ask what occupied meant, he was gone. The warehouse doors slammed shut behind him, leaving me alone with the exhibits. The first hour was easy. Silent. Boring. I tried scrolling my phone, but the silence in that warehouse pressed in on me. Every little click felt deafening. Eventually, I turned it off, just like he'd told me to. That was when I heard it. Step, drag. Step, drag. Footsteps. Wet. Uneven. Moving slowly across the concrete floor. My heart seized. I whipped my head toward the sound, only to realize it wasn't coming from the floor at all. It was coming from the shoes. They weren't where they had been. They'd shifted just slightly, as though they'd taken a step forward under the spotlight. And the sound, the awful wet dragging, was the echo of invisible feet wearing them. I nearly bolted for the door. But my paycheck flashed in my mind, and I forced myself to sit. I scribbled in the logbook, 1:13 a.m., footsteps near Exhibit 2. Shoes possibly moved. The pen shook in my hand. That was when I heard the second sound. Shk, shk. A brush against canvas. Slow, deliberate. I looked up. The pedestal wasn't empty anymore. At first, I thought my eyes were tricking me. But no, someone was sitting cross-legged atop the pedestal, back hunched, arm moving rhythmically. A painter, silhouette dark against the spotlight. But there was no canvas in front of him. The canvas was behind him, facing me. I clutched the logbook so hard my knuckles popped. My instructions rang in my head like church bells. Do not look when occupied. I tried to avert my eyes, tried to focus on the floor, the shoes, anywhere but that pedestal. But I couldn't help myself. Curiosity clawed at me. My eyes darted back, and in the half-light I saw the strokes appear on the canvas as if painted in invisible ink, blooming into color with each pass of his brush. And it wasn't just paint. It was me, my face, my clothes, every detail down to the trembling pen clutched in my hand. I watched in horror as the figure painted me into being, stroke by stroke, and with each line I felt something tear inside my body like a knife scratching along bone. I couldn't move. My skin crawled, alive with invisible bristles. My chest seized as though wet paint was weighing down my lungs. And then I realized the painting wasn't static. It was current. Every blink I made, every twitch of my hand, every bead of sweat dripping down my temple, it all appeared instantly on the canvas. The painter wasn't creating an image. He was recording me in real time. I don't remember how long I sat there, frozen, as he worked. Maybe minutes, maybe hours. Time didn't feel real. But eventually, the brush strokes slowed. The figure straightened, admiring his work. And then, just like that, he vanished. The pedestal was empty again, but the canvas remained, and my likeness stared back at me from the frame, eyes wide with terror, pen poised over the logbook. I snapped. I ran. I didn't stop to grab the log, or my phone, or the paycheck I'd been promised. It's been 3 days since then. I never went back. Never answered the calls from the man in the suit. But this morning I found something in my apartment. Leaning against the wall by my bed was a painting. The same painting. The same terrified face. Except now, it's unfinished. There's a blank space next to me. A figure still being painted in. And from the corner of the room, I swear I can hear it. The sound of a brush dragging slowly across canvas. When my grandfather disappeared in 1968, no one called it strange. Men walked out all the time back then. Vietnam, New families, debts they didn't want to pay if a man vanished. People just shrugged and said he had his reasons. But my family knew better. Because of the photographs, the box was kept in the attic of my parents' house, hidden under blankets and moth-eaten coats. Old Kodak envelopes stuffed with Polaroids, family cookouts, birthday parties, church picnics, ordinary snapshots of ordinary life. Except for him. In nearly every photograph, somewhere along the edge of the frame, a man stood at the tree line. Always distant, always out of focus, always watching. He wore the same thing every time: dark trousers, a long coat that looked too heavy for summer, and a brimmed hat that shadowed his face. No one ever remembered inviting him. No one ever remembered seeing him in person. But in the photos, he was always there. My mother once told me about the night they burned the box. She was a little girl then, maybe 7. My grandmother dragged a metal trash can into the backyard, stuffed it full of photographs, and doused them in lighter fluid. "We don't keep his image," she said. "We don't give him a place." The flames roared high. Ash swirled into the dark, and for a while it seemed like he was gone. But my grandfather vanished not long after. He kissed my mother goodnight, tucked her in with a story, and by morning his bed was empty. His car still in the driveway, his shoes by the door. Only his clothes were missing. Dark trousers, a long coat, a brimmed hat. I didn't grow up with the photographs. They were just family legend, whispered about like the boogeyman. By the time I came along, my parents had boxed up what little remained and shoved it into storage. But when my parents downsized last year, guess who got stuck with the old boxes? Me. It was a rainy Sunday when I found them. I'd been digging for an extension cord when my hand hit the familiar cardboard. Curiosity won. I hauled the box downstairs, spread the Polaroids across the coffee table, and braced myself for nothing. But there he was. Even after all these years, even in photos so faded the colors bled into sepia, he was still there. Standing at the edge of a 4th of July cookout, lurking behind the bleachers at my mom's high school game, watching from the trees during my uncle's wedding, and something else. He wasn't always the same distance away. In one photo he was far back in the woods. In the next, a few feet closer. And in another, closer still. Step by step, over years, he had been moving forward. I told myself it was coincidence, tricks of the eye, pareidolia. But when I scanned the Polaroids onto my laptop, the truth became harder to ignore. Because, in the digital copies, he wasn't just closer, he was clearer. Every time I opened a file, the man seemed sharper, as if the pixels had rearranged themselves in his favor. His coat took on texture, his hat brim sharpened, and though his face was still shadowed, I could almost make out the suggestion of eyes beneath it. Eyes looking right at me. I tried to laugh it off, but then the files started acting wrong. The dates in the metadata weren't from the 1962nd. They were current, stamped with the exact day and time I opened them. Worse, new files appeared on their own. Photos I hadn't scanned. Images of my apartment, my street, the corner store down the block. And in each of them, there he was. Closer, closer, closer. The night everything broke open, I was home alone. My nerves were fried, hands shaking as I tried to delete the entire folder. My laptop screen filled with progress bars, one after another, until finally the last file was gone. Or so I thought. Because when I shut the laptop, the reflection on the dark screen showed something behind me. A man in a brimmed hat. The doorbell saved me. The chime rang sharp in the silence, jerking me to my feet. I stumbled to the door, heart pounding, grateful for anything that wasn't shadows and screens. The video feed from my Ring doorbell lit up my phone. A grainy figure stood on the porch, soaked in rain. The system's AI automatically tagged the face. The notification read, "Person detected, Grandpa." I didn't open the door. I couldn't. Instead, I watched as he stood there for hours, motionless, until the rain stopped and the night swallowed him. By morning, he was gone. But in my inbox, waiting for me, was an email. No sender, no subject, just an attachment. A photograph of me, sitting on the floor in front of the door, clutching my phone. And at the edge of the frame, a shadow leaned in, closer than it had ever been before. I don't use my camera anymore. I don't take pictures. I don't let anyone take pictures of me. Because once he's in the frame, he never leaves. He just keeps moving closer. And one day soon, he'll be standing not at the edge of the photo, but in the center,